What does it mean to live a resilient life? I'm Ryan Manion. I lost my brother to war and my mom to cancer, and I've learned a lot about myself along the way. Now, as the CEO of Travis Manion Foundation, I'm on a journey to explore what it means to be resilient against life's many challenges. Join me and some incredible guests as we ask ourselves the hard questions and define what it means to struggle well. All right, we're back today with Jocko Willink, who is no stranger to the show. And today I wanted to hear from you. So what I thought would be fun is 20 questions for Jocko. So we kind of put the call out and we got some of the most burning questions that you want Jocko to answer. Are you ready for them, Jocko?
Yes.
Okay. All right. We're going to start off with some military themed questions that came in from some of our listeners. First question is, what do you miss most about serving in uniform?
My friends.
Your friends. Expand. You can expand a little on that. The camaraderie, the community.
Yeah, going to work with a bunch of my friends every single day was pretty awesome.
Yeah, love it. What's one piece of advice you have for active duty service members who are preparing to transition out of the military?
Be humble, because you've been doing your job in the military for 4 years or 8 years or 12 years or 20 years or 25 years or whatever the case may be, and you're going to go be a new guy in some civilian company. So they're going to give you a little bit of respect because you served, and we all appreciate that. But you're going to have to work. You're going to be a new guy. So just be ready, be humble, be ready to have an open mind and learn.
Love that. What is one thing you wish civilians knew or understood better about the military community?
I would say that the military is not a monolith of thought, and that just because someone was in the military doesn't mean that they think the same way as someone else that's in the military. So there's a lot of diversity in the military, and I think sometimes people think that everyone in the military is the same, and we're not.
I love that. I could not love that answer more, and I could not agree with you more. Okay, we're going to jump over to a little Jocko Fuel. What is your favorite Jocko Fuel protein powder flavor?
Probably peanut butter chocolate or chocolate peanut butter.
Oh,
That one's tasty.
I don't know if I've ever had that one, to tell you the truth. Okay.
You're definitely missing out.
Okay.
It's the Reese's peanut butter cup milkshake.
I mean, I'm obviously partial to the cookies and cream.
I hear you.
Yeah, but I'm gonna have to try that. I like I normally put the PB2, some PB2 powder in the chocolate.
Okay.
So I didn't know you had the chocolate peanut butter flavor, so I'll just get that.
Been
How many Jocko Goes have you consumed in one day?
I think the most I've consumed is 4.
4.
And that's not normal, but I probably hadn't slept and had a bunch of work to do and was presenting or something like that. So yeah, 4.
Okay. This question came up a lot. I don't think I'm that surprised, but I thought it was funny. Give us what you eat in a daily day of eating from Jocko.
Wake up in the morning. So does this include, so in the morning I have Time War and I have Super Krill and I have Joint Warfare. I have that every morning,
Okay.
regardless of what else is going on. Then I work out usually around, I don't eat until like around maybe 10:30. And I usually just eat like mixed nuts, as weird as that is. But I like get Costco mixed nuts and I just stick my hand in there and I just kind of graze on those for a while. For lunch, I might have a milk, probably, like I said, a peanut butter chocolate milk. If it's winter time, sometimes I heat up and have hot chocolate milk, and that's just straight chocolate, which is delicious. And actually, my wife she makes monk fruit whipped cream. So it's like whipped cream made with monk fruit, so no sugar. That's awesome, and it's really delicious. It's that right there is as delicious as having a hot chocolate from some bougie restaurant. It's just amazing. So, but that's usually like my lunch thing. I tend to snack on seeds, sunflower seeds, because they're just like boredom. You know, if I'm boredom eating, I'll boredom eat some sunflower seeds. And then for dinner, I'll probably have a steak, ribeye, and some kind of salad, either Caesar salad or uh yeah, like a oil and vinegar, oil and vinaigrette salad. And then I'll have a milk for dessert. Usually, like it's either gonna be like peanut butter chocolate, or like I said, if it's in wintertime or it's cold out, I'll have a hot chocolate milk. And that's pretty much it. Something along those lines.
Have you seen? I've been seeing all over the internet now. They're talking about these bone broth hot chocolates. So you can actually you make them with your favorite protein powder. So you take the Jocko chocolate protein powder, use that, and you actually heat up bone broth, and that's the liquid that you use. I haven't tried it yet, but people are swearing that it's like super thick and rich, and so I'm looking forward to trying that.
Okay, I'll try that. And
Yeah.
you know, of course, like right now I'm drinking a go because I'm doing this interview with you and I got to be mentally sharp. So,
There you go. I'm not surprised by your I feel like I could have predicted your what you eat in a day to some degree.
yeah, I'm super boring.
Yeah.
So, that's
Okay, what is this is funny. We had a few people ask this one and I thought it was funny. What is the latest you have ever slept in?
I don't know. I mean, it's hard for me to sleep in because I wake up early pretty regularly. But you
Yeah.
know, if I get home at 2 o'clock in the morning from a delayed flight, I'll not set my alarm and I'll wake up at 6 or 7 or something like that.
6 or 7.
Yeah,
That's like
yeah.
okay.
I have a hard time sleeping in. Maybe if I get sick, if I'm sick and I
Sure.
won't set my alarm and I'll wake up at like 3 and I'm like, okay, this is ridiculous.
Do you wear a Garmin or do you wear any
No.
sort of tracking device? So you don't like track your sleep. Where like cuz I
I
wake up and I know like, oh, well, my Garmin tells me that I got a good night's sleep.
Yeah, I have a thing that tells me if I slept good or not, and I don't sleep good.
Okay. Yeah, you get like your sleep score. Like I have
My
my
sleep
sleep
score
score
is
every day.
terrible.
I
Yeah,
know. Okay.
my
So
sleep score's not.
you have a terrible sleep score. Okay.
Yeah, but the weird thing is, I don't know if that's just. I don't know why that is. I feel fine.
Well, yeah, and I think you know what? It's so funny because I get like well, when I first started wearing a watch, I was wearing an Apple Watch for a while and then I turned to the Garmin and I let that watch dictate like how I felt instead of actually saying this is how I feel. Like if the Garmin told me I had a bad sleep score and I didn't get good sleep, but I felt okay, I would be like, well, I probably shouldn't push it too hard today because my Garmin's telling me to take it
Yeah,
easy.
I've heard a lot of feedback about that of people saying they were allowing their wearable watch
Yeah.
dictate how they felt for the day, and so yeah, I don't really believe in that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I still kind of do that admittedly. I'm working on it. Um what is your biggest pet peeve?
I don't really have any big pet peeves. I'm not really a person that gets super annoyed by stuff or anything. I don't know if I have anything that, yeah, I'd say I'm pretty chill. I don't know if there's too much that really
Nothing
annoys.
bothers you. Nothing like gets under your skin. Nothing annoys you. No type of habits people have or things people do or there's nothing that you can think of.
There's nothing that really comes to mind of something that really bothers me that much.
I love it.
Uh,
Your pet
yeah,
peeve
I mean, a lot
list.
of people freak out about stuff. I'm not a very, you know, emotional person about stuff. So it's not going to make me freak out about something
All right.
that, yeah.
Well, to that end, is there anything that you are afraid of?
Mm. I don't like sharks,
Mm.
but I don't think about it. 'Cause I surf,
Yeah.
but I don't think about them very much, but I don't like them. I used to be a little bit more afraid of elephants, and I had a bad experience with elephants, so they kind of freaked me out for a while, but I think I'm more chill to them now. I don't think I'd be too scared of them. Uh, yeah,
You have a healthy fear of sharks and elephants. We'll say
yeah,
that.
but I don't really. The weird thing is, I don't like sharks, but I don't think about them.
Right. Unless
Like
you
if you
see them.
tell me, hey, there's a shark over there, you need to go swim with it, I wouldn't be very excited to do
Nor would many people.
that.
Um, Favorite book not written by you?
Well, About Face, written by Colonel David Hackworth, my favorite book.
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that book, Colonel David Hackworth was a soldier. He fought in the Korean War. He fought in the Vietnam War. Before that, he was a merchant marine. He was at right after World War II. He joined the army. And he was 15 years old,
Mm.
and he ended up going up through the ranks. Got commissioned as an officer in Korea, like battlefield commission scenario, and he then became highly decorated, and then he served in Vietnam. I think he spent 4 years in Vietnam, did 2 tours as a battalion commander, and he was one of the most highly decorated soldiers in the army. And he actually then did an interview and said in the interview basically that if we don't change the way we're fighting, we're going to lose this war. And he was the first senior leader to say anything negative about the Vietnam War. He was very quickly thereafter drummed out of the US military or out of the army, and he moved to Australia and started a chicken farm or something like that.
Wow.
And whatever it was, 20 years later, he wrote a book. He wrote this book about his experiences, and it's just a phenomenal book. It's great leadership lessons. I stole all kinds of leadership stuff from him when I was in the military. I stole like a bunch of things that he would do, I would do. And he was very looked down upon by the Army and by the Navy. And it was weird because I always liked him. And so I would talk to senior officers about him and they would disparage him. And it wasn't until recently that he became very accepted in the Army. I went to West Point and I was talking to the leadership at West Point, and they're like, Hackworth was right. And so I talked about when I have a podcast, and the first book, I review books on my podcast, as weird as that is. I review a lot of old historical out of print books. And the first book I reviewed on that podcast was the book About Face. And the book made a comeback. It was what publishers called an I think they call it archive book,
Yeah.
meaning it's not in print anymore and it's just there.
Yep.
And when I started talking about it, people started buying it, and the old copies got, on eBay were worth hundreds of dollars. And so they reprinted it. And when they reprinted it, they actually reached out to me, and I ended up writing the foreword for the new version of the book About Face. And that's one of the biggest honors I've had in my life, was to be asked to write that foreword for that book. Guy that I never met him before, but he was a huge mentor to me, and just a phenomenal leader. And I had it's weird because you read this book, it's an 800-page book, it's a huge book.
Wow.
And clearly he's writing a book about himself, and it's very, he did like crazy heroic things, and I think he had 8 silver stars and a Distinguished Service Cross. Like, he was highly decorated.
Yeah.
But you still wonder what a guy's like in real life, you don't really know. And I ended up years later having a guy on my podcast, a guy named Jim Mukayama. And Jim Mukayama was he retired as an Army general, 3-star general. He was the first Asian American, I think, division commander or something like that. Really great guy. And he was one of Hackworth's company commanders in Vietnam. And so when I was going to interview him, I was kind of curious to see what he would say. Like, what is Hackworth really like?
Yeah.
From a guy that worked for him. And I remember, so we started getting to the Hackworth part of the interview, and I said something like, this guy was the aide de camp in Fort Lewis, Washington, and Hackworth was checking in on board. And so he's sitting there waiting, and Hackworth walks in. And I go, "Did you know who Hackworth was at the time?" And he goes, "Everybody knew who Hackworth was." and then he goes, "Mr. Infantry." That was his nickname. His nickname was Mr. Infantry,
Wow.
which is the best nickname of all time.
Yeah.
And then I said, "Well, what was he like?" And he just said everything was about him was exactly what you'd expect. And everything was squared away, and he was this totally in shape guy, and high and tight haircut. And then he went, we talked about that, but then eventually they deployed to Vietnam together. And, he said Hackworth, they just loved Hackworth. So I was very happy to hear that this guy that I'd put up on a pedestal in my mind actually belonged there.
Yeah, that's such a cool story. I love that. When did he pass away?
2005.
Okay, so
Yep.
Wow, that's very cool.
Yeah, he died of cancer. He spent 4 years in Vietnam, so Agent Orange was the root cause of what killed him.
Wow, that's awesome. Okay, what is your favorite song? Or if you don't have a favorite song, if you had to listen to something on repeat, what's it going to be?
Probably War Pigs, Black Sabbath.
I don't know that I could tell you what that song is, but
okay,
I'm sure it's very hardcore heavy metal if it's Black Sabbath. So I'm gonna put it on Spotify, and when I get in my car later and listen to it.
Let's
go. What is one of your personal goals for 2025?
For 2025?
Yeah.
Well, I'll do the same. I've been telling my wife the same personal goals, every time, like New Year's Eve, New Year's resolutions. She doesn't ask me anymore, but for a solid probably 10 years, our first 10 years of marriage, she would ask me. And I would always say, get better at jiu-jitsu and surf more. So that's my goal, is to get better at jiu-jitsu and surf more.
Okay. So speaking of, this question came in and I thought it was interesting. You've been open about your admiration and appreciation for legendary samurai Miyamoto. Am I saying that right? Miyamoto Musashi. If you could ask him one question, what would it be?
I would probably go back and review the Book of Five Rings and try and narrow down what a good, if I was only going to get one question.
Yeah.
A guy. Yeah, I would probably have to review and do a little homework before I just rolled out and threw some question at him. The kind of the closing story of Musashi was he had, I think, 62 duels, sword duels, and these were duels to the death. Like, you lose, you die. And the last one that he did, he showed up, and on his way, it was on a little island. And on his way to this little island, he took one of the boat oars and whittled the boat oar into a sword, a wooden sword. And he fought his opponent with a piece of wood.
And
so, I don't know, maybe I'd probably ask him something about his confidence level going into that fight. Why would you be arrogant enough to think you could beat someone with a piece of wood?
Yeah. I like that. If you could choose only one way to stay fit, like one modality, what are you doing?
Literally just one?
Well, I mean, it could be like it doesn't have to be like burpees, but like, is it jiu-jitsu? Is it,
Yeah, I mean, the thing is with jiu-jitsu is definitely, if I could only do one physical activity, jiu-jitsu would be it.
Okay.
Because you get cardio, you get strength, you get flexibility, and you get this incredible skill. And so jiu-jitsu would definitely be number one.
because of all the different things that you can take away from it.
Yeah, all the different things you get from it.
Yeah.
And
Somebody
it's
asked,
super fun.
I didn't put this on, but somebody did ask a question about when was the first time, or has your daughter ever choked you out?
No, um, no, she hasn't. She, eventually, if you play around enough jujitsu, like you're gonna get caught.
Yeah.
I think she's nervous, but also I'm a lot bigger and stronger than she is. And jujitsu, it can mitigate strength and size, but if both people are skilled, then strength and size plays a role.
Right.
And I'm like a lot bigger than my daughter, but my daughter has threatened me where I've been like, well, yo, I need to defend this, which is pretty awesome. She's very good, and anyone that's really good at jujitsu, if you make a mistake, jujitsu. This is what I tell people: jujitsu works.
Yeah.
And if my daughter catches my arm or catches my neck or catches my knee, jiu-jitsu works and it'll work. Doesn't matter if she's smaller than me. Jiu-jitsu works and I'll have to tap. That's just the way it works.
It's so cool when I see videos that you put up of her on the mat. Like, it's so badass. And like, I'm always someone that wants to try everything. And when I was at the women's assembly last year, I had to catch a plane, but you guys did a little, women's jiu-jitsu. And in my head, as much as I wanted to try it, like it actually scared me, and there's not many things where I'm like too scared to try it. But that I was just like, it's so cool. And it's so cool to see how well she's doing. And it's good stuff. You must be super proud.
It's very cool. It's fun. It's a really fun thing, and it's cool to be able to hang out with her, and I can train with her.
Yeah.
I can train with her because that's just fun to be able to train with just like any sport that you can do with your family is fun.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, I feel this. I've got a daughter that's now playing Division I lacrosse, and like I played in college, and just I think back to like I was her first coach. When she was 5 years old, I was giving her that stick, and yeah, it's awesome. Thanksgiving is approaching. Someone wanted to know what your favorite Thanksgiving dish is.
My wife makes the best prime rib in the world, and she makes me like this so much prime rib. So, yeah, prime rib. My wife's prime rib is amazing. It's the best. It's probably the best meal. It's probably my favorite meal.
Just in
period.
general. Do you have a turkey on Thanksgiving?
My wife may or may not make a little turkey for if we have guests over, but I'm not touching turkey, not when there's prime rib.
Okay. So prime rib at the Willink Thanksgiving table.
Yes.
If someone wants to improve their mental health, what is the first step you would tell them to take?
I think making sure that your physical health, you're paying attention to your physical health. Mm-hmm. So make sure you're eating right. Make sure you're working out, making sure you're getting exercise, make sure you're getting outside. I think those are the first things to pay attention to. And I think that they also get the first things to go.
Yeah.
When we're having a hard time with things, like the easiest thing to do is do nothing. So I would say, check those things out. Make sure you're doing the right physical things. And I think it's very helpful to be able to talk to people about things. I've explained this before. I was in a position where when I lost friends, for whatever reason, I usually was the guy that was going to be doing the eulogy. And what that meant was I was going to have to sit down within within hours.
Yeah.
And start writing, what this person meant to me and, all these emotional things. And I realized that over time, that was actually a really healthy thing to do and very beneficial to sit down and capture these and get these emotions kind of out. And then of course, being in the SEAL teams, you're sort of around guys and you're going to talk through things. And I think that, eventually I ended up writing books. And when you're writing books, you're kind of thinking through things and articulating them. And you can see and understand what you're thinking better when you have to write about it. So I think that having someone to talk to and you know, having friends and then writing about what's going on in your head so you can actually look at it and go, oh, okay, I'm kind of piecing this together now. That, and eventually if that doesn't help you, then getting someone that is a professional,
Yep.
that knows how to help people. Because you know, I quite frankly didn't realize this until I have a friend that's a psychologist named Jordan Peterson, and he's a clinical psychologist, and he came on my podcast, and I realized while he was talking that he had a methodology to help people get through mental issues that they were having. And I never really understood that before, but and the way I ended up comprehending it in my simplistic mind was, when you have a problem with your car, especially a modern, look, if you have a 1971 Ford Bronco, and you got a problem with it, you can open up, you can kind of understand what's going on. But a modern car, you can't.
Yeah.
Like, you look inside of, and that's what's going on in your brain.
It's a computer.
So you don't really know what's happening.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't expect your car just to get better on its own. If your car's making a noise or it's overheating, you can't expect that your car is just going to heal itself. Well, your brain is the same way. And so there are people, psychologists and therapists, that see these same problems over and over again. Like, oh, you're scared of this thing, or oh, you're having a hard time with this thing, or oh, you care too much or too little, whatever the thing is. You go to these people and they can help you. And so I never really understood that, because I never really did that, and I haven't done that, but I understood, oh, now I get what it is. And so I think there's a little escalation that you can do if you're kind of going through a rough patch. Number one, write about it. Number two, talk about it with your friends. And if neither one of those things start to give you any resolution, I would say you got to go talk to somebody that actually is a brain mechanic.
Yeah.
That knows how to get things back in order.
I love it. I often tell the story, you know, when I was young, anything that was bothering me, like I'd come into the house and be like, I got an F on my math test. And my dad would say, well, maybe you should go for a run and think about that. Or I'd say, you know, I'm in a fight with my friend. And my dad would say, well, then you should go for a run and think about, you know, I could say, Dad, I think my arm's broken. And he'd be like, well, go for a run. And when you come back, see if it still hurts. Like literally anything that was bothering me, my dad thought could be solved by going for a run. And I used to be like super resentful about that when I was young. Even as a teenager, I'd be like, my dad understands nothing about kids and how, you know, all he does is tell me to go for a run. And it was really when I was dealing with some mental health challenges after the loss of my brother that it was like a light bulb went off. And I found like this super big correlation between your physical and mental health. And guess what? When my brother died, I went out for a run and ended up running a marathon. Like that is literally how I healed. I started training for a marathon like weeks after he died. And so I'm all about like, where do you start? Like go for a run, you know, just go for a run. So I hear you on that. What is the first thing you do in the morning? Like
brush my teeth.
Brush your teeth.
Well, actually, I mean, like I said, I take joint warfare, super krill, and time war, and I take that. This is like my supplements I take in the morning.
So I'm going to ask you this: when you open your eyes in the morning, you're lying in bed. Do you look at your phone before you get out of bed?
Well, what I do is I get up, get out of bed, open my phone, take a picture of my watch, and post it. So
that's true.
Yes,
that's true. You do that. Okay. Because there's like this, like, and I will say I'm guilty of it. Like the first thing I do when I wake up, I check my Garmin watch for my sleep score to see if I'm ready to tackle the day. But I look at my phone. I check my emails. And I know it's terrible. It's terrible. But
yeah, I think there's information overload at this point.
Totally.
Where I I'm I'm not even curious anymore. I'm not curious about who emailed me in the morning or who texted me or who posted what. I'm not. There's so much of it,
Yeah.
and like how who's gonna say what? There's just too much stuff to do, like actual real life stuff to do.
Yeah.
So, I'll look at my emails, make sure nothing crazy has happened. Um, make sure no one texted me that, well, my adult children, make sure, if one of them texted me in the morning, I need help or, I mean, whatever,
Yeah.
I guess I would look for that. But no, it's pretty much don't really care about any of that stuff. There's so much information out there that I think it's at a level 10 and I just don't, I'm not that, I'm not that curious anymore about
I
what's.
I mean, isn't that sad though that there's so much information that you're not even
Yeah,
curious?
I mean, it's either sad or it's kind of cool. I think it's fine. I think it's fine. You can find some cool stuff on social media. You can get connected to some cool people. I connected with some really awesome people.
Yeah.
In fact, when I talked to that story about Jim Mukayama, it was his son on Twitter that hit me up and said, "Hey, my dad is named James Mukayama. I think you read his name in this book."
Wow.
Like, oh, you mean this guy? And yep, sure enough, it was him. So, there's plenty of good stuff out there, but you can definitely get lost in the algorithm if you're not careful.
Totally. Okay, so first thing in the morning, we know what you do. What about the last thing you do at night? Is there anything you do routinely?
Just set my alarm clocks and go to bed.
Okay.
Like, yeah, I'm not. Again, we kind of discovered this a little bit when I talked about what I eat. I'm super boring. I'm a boring person, so I don't have, this four-step meditative process that I go through at night or this, morning ritual that I go through. It's like I'm not.
Well,
uh,
there's a big push right now for like you see like don't, no screens 2 hours before bed. You get up, don't look at your phone. The first thing you should do is lemon water with salt before you do anything. You need to ground yourself outside and feel the sunlight and then meditate and then journal and I mean, you see it. It's
yeah,
all
yeah,
over. So,
right on.
yeah.
That stuff sounds cool. I mean, it sounds pretty cool. I mean, I like all that stuff. Sounds good.
Um, what is your favorite movie?
So, The Pacific, which is actually a miniseries,
Yeah.
um, is definitely one of my favorites, as is Band of Brothers. And so those are probably my favorite movies. And I know they're not really movies because
No,
they're
but
mini.
that were, I mean, so I just, this past weekend, I just commissioned the USS John Basilone in New York City. Yeah, I'm the ship sponsor for it. So
Oh,
I got to stand up there in front of the whole crew and say, "Man my ship and bring her to life." And so I am a permanent member of the crew for the USS
oh
John
gosh.
Basilone. So it's like most incredible honor to be a ship sponsor for him and
Yeah.
his legacy. It's pretty awesome.
As he.
Yeah,
That's
incredible. Yeah. Um, what is your number one parenting tip?
okay. So the reason I take a big sigh is because that's such a broad question that
Sure.
I don't. So there's a couple things I'll say.
Okay.
Number one, your kids are not going to be who you want them to be. They're going to be who they are. And the harder you try and force them to become what it is you want them to become, the most likely, the more likely that you are going to get resistance and maybe even rebellion.
Yeah.
And that is not only true with your kids, it's also true with your team. And when you impose things on your team or you impose things on your employees, you impose things on your people, they rebel against it. So leadership of your family and leadership of your kids is the same as leadership of a platoon or a team. The only difference being we are more emotional about our own family members, and we are more, we have less control over our emotions with our own family members because we care about them so much. And so if you apply the leadership principles that I talk about all the time with your family, they will work. The only thing you have to be careful of, it's very difficult to keep your emotions in check because they're your family and you care about them. And Ryan, you know, if you worked for me and I really cared about you as an employee, but you were just messing things up and you were going down the wrong path and I kept trying to straighten you out and you just couldn't listen and you show up late and you were just making all these mistakes and I counseled you and went through the escalation of counseling to try and get you straightened out and you just couldn't get on board. Eventually I just go, hey, you know what, Ryan, you don't work here anymore. You're fired.
Yeah.
And that's fine. And you'll go get a job somewhere else and we'll carry on. But you can't fire your kids and they're going to be with you. And you care about them so much. And since you know they represent you and they represent the family and you want them to have a good life, you care about them so much that you want to micromanagement, you want to control everything. And that doesn't work in a SEAL platoon and it doesn't work with your kids. So relax, give them space, give them responsibility. This is all the things that you should do with your team. You should let your team lead. You should let your kids lead. You should listen to what your team has to say. You should listen to your kids. You should treat your team members with respect. You should treat your kids with respect. You should allow your kids to influence you. You should allow your team to influence you. You should not bark orders at your team. You should not bark orders at your kid. You should explain why things are happening and why we need to do things to your team. And you should explain why to your kids. You should trust, listen, respect, and influence your kids just like you would respect, trust, listen, and influence to your team. So those are my recommendations. And the last one is make things fun. You want your kid to be good at jiu-jitsu, make jiu-jitsu fun. You want them to be good at lacrosse, make lacrosse fun. And there's a decent chance that your kid's just not into lacrosse. There's a decent chance your kid doesn't really want to do jiu-jitsu. They don't see the amazingness that you see in it. And the more you force it down their throat, the more they're going to throw it back up.
That's so true. I'm laughing because nothing pains me more than the fact that my 10-year-old son, Travis, loves every sport known to man. I mean, everything except for wrestling. And I have tried everything. Joe Masciantonio's got an incredible academy down the road from me. We have tried to bring him there and make it everything. And he finally said, Mom, I just don't like wrestling. And I was like, okay. And
how old is he?
He's 10. He's 10.
Yep.
So it pains me, but he loves basketball. He loves football. He loves lacrosse. He loves it all. And I'm like, and I say to Joe all the time, I'm like, maybe one day he's just going to turn to me and say, hey, bring me back over to Pursuit. And I'll get him in the car so fast, but you know, just can't force it. So,
so I forced jiu-jitsu onto all my kids, and my two older daughters, they rebelled. I forced it even harder once they rebelled. Finally, they got my wife on their team, and I got shut down. And I also realized, I was like, okay, this is terrible. Yeah. I am not doing a good thing. And I eventually just said, okay, yep, I get it. And I backed off. And now both my daughters, my older daughters, my younger daughter, I was more experienced as a dad. So I didn't make the same mistakes. But my older two daughters, I went psycho, forced them into jiu-jitsu. They eventually said, we don't want to do this anymore. But the middle daughter wrestled in high school and was a great wrestler. And now she trains jiu-jitsu, teaches jiu-jitsu. She probably trains 5 hours a day and she teaches 2 or 3 hours a day. So she's totally obsessed with jiu-jitsu. So your son, at some point, and he could also try jiu-jitsu because it's a little bit more, is he smart? Is he like a super smart little kid?
He's too smart for his own good. Yeah.
Okay.
Super
So
smart.
you might be able to get him into jujitsu because it's a very cerebral game. And I've had a lot of kids along the way where smart kids, where they go, oh, I can learn this and then I can beat people physically, which I normally wouldn't be able to physically beat. So just because wrestling is not quite like that.
Right.
So just one of those things. And
Yeah.
if he gets a good jiu-jitsu base, he'll have a good wrestling base eventually.
Yeah. I'll keep working it. I'll keep working it.
Yep.
Somebody asked, do you have a favorite joke?
A favorite joke.
A favorite joke or slash what makes you laugh the hardest?
That just made me laugh, apparently. What do I have a favorite joke? I have a clip. There's a clip of Theo Vaughn. Theo Vaughn and I are talking, and Theo Vaughn is talking about this girlfriend that he had and how she was older than him.
I've seen
And
it.
how, yeah, that every time I see that clip, I laugh.
I mean,
and so,
every time Theo Vaughn talks, I laugh.
So I was in Nashville and I was there for an event. And my friend from Echelon Front, Jack Daniel, was there. And I'm in my hotel and I have to leave in a few hours. And I texted Theo and I said, hey, man, I'm in Nashville. And he goes, where are you? And I sent him the hotel, whatever, the Hilton or whatever it was. And he goes, I'll be there in 10 minutes. And so he just rolls down and we sat in the lobby because I had checked out of my room and we sat in the lobby for like 2.5 hours and laughed hysterically. And so
That's where you recorded the episode?
No, we didn't record it.
Oh, that was just you
out.
guys talk. Okay, got it.
Hanging out. And that's what, it's kind of cool because, when you're recording an episode, at least some part of you knows that, well, people are going to hear this, but we were just chilling. We were just having a good time. And he's just such a hilarious guy. Yeah. So but yeah, that little clip of him talking about getting kissed on by this girl and how everybody's got their Vietnam, and he goes, that was insane, man. It's just funny, and he's a really super nice guy too. But yeah,
he seems like a really just like compassionate guy. Yeah, I love it. All right, so those were a lot of the questions that came in from people, that the burning questions people wanted to know. I have one question for you as we finish up. And, you have done so much over the years to support the Travis Manion Foundation. And, I just want to share with you how much that truly means. And you've done that in a lot of different facets. And my question for you is, there are over 45,000 veteran service organizations. Why have you given the support to the Travis Manion Foundation that you have?
I guess, the original initial connection was just the connection that, I think that we have through Jamie Cochran, who's married to Flynn Cochran, who's friends with Brendan, and I think that whole connection is the original, that's probably how you and I first talked. I don't really remember.
I think that, or I think through Jenna too.
Oh, maybe it was Jenna.
It was, yeah.
Well, how are you connected to Jenna?
I was on Jenna's show, like Fox show, like 12 years ago, 13 years ago. We just became good friends from there. Yeah.
Well, maybe it was Jenna then. Well, isn't that interesting? The world is so small. You know what I mean? It's so small that Brendan, who's really good friends with Flynn Cochran, who's Jamie's husband, so it's so weird how, things are just so connected. So whichever one of those avenues, and it was probably a combination then of, Jenna talking to me about you and what you're doing. And then all of a sudden there's this other connection. And now, and then I remember just seeing what you all were doing And yeah, I think it's just I think it's a positive thing. I really like the idea of trying to help out kids. Obviously, you know, I've written a kid's book and making a kid's movie, and like it's I really like that what you all are doing is aimed, part of it is aimed at developing character in kids.
Yeah.
So I'd say that's that's not extremely common amongst veterans organizations, that they're really focused on kids. And I think that's probably one of the main things that I enjoy and appreciate about the Travis Manion Foundation, is that aspect of it. Of course, you know, helping veterans as well, and getting veterans um, to travel down a good positive path with is obviously important as well. So I think those are the kind of how it all came about.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate it. And, you know, I have said, and I don't know if I've ever actually told you, but you did a video for us several years ago now, probably 5 or 6 years ago, for our Character Does Matter program. And I think I was telling Joe this a few months ago, but when we were talking about that video that you helped record, and that video became the video that our veteran ambassadors, and of which we have over 3,000 across the country, you know, they go out and they deliver this curriculum, and we give them a lot of freedoms in putting their own presentation together and sharing their story. But like that video it's like, this has to be part of the curriculum and of the presentation. And I said to Joe, I'm like, I wonder if Jocko knows that like that video has been shown to almost 1 million youth across the country. And when we first did that, you know, you hadn't written any Way of the Warrior Kid books. And, you know, you weren't as large of a public figure as you are now. And it's so funny because we were just like, we loved Jocko's leadership principles. You had just written Extreme Ownership. It was like, this is a good time. You talked about leadership in that video. And when I used to show it, it's like you, and then it's another Army veteran named Earl Lundy, and he tells his story about being injured in Iraq. And we loved like the juxtaposition of you guys telling your stories. But when we used to show that video, you were just some, you know, Navy SEAL talking. And when I go in and I do a few presentations a year, and when you come on screen, like especially the young men in the audience, like they're like, holy, you know, it's Jocko. So it's pretty cool. And again, we appreciate everything that you do, not just for the Travis Manion Foundation, but to bring awareness to the military community as a whole. So I hope you know it doesn't go unnoticed. And I do have one last question for you. You will be attending the Army-Navy game this year, as you have for the last several years. I'm not going to ask you who you want to win, because you're going to say, you know, America. I know what answer you're going to give, so I'm not going to ask you that. But I'm going to ask you who you think will win and your score prediction. I've been asking everybody coming to the game what this is. So not who you want, but who you think. I don't know if you've been tracking these two teams.
I've been tracking. So we have these are two like of the most legit teams in a while. Right?
Yes. This is going to be a huge matchup this year. Huge.
Yeah, but I don't follow it closely enough to be like, oh, here's my prediction. I would have to do a little research before I tried to make some kind of a prediction. And I think you already called me out on the fact that I am I support the Army and the Marine Corps and the Navy so much that it is truly like impossible for me to root for either one of those teams to lose. So I hope it's a tie.
We hope it's a good game, which it always is. And and we'd love for you guys to join us at our Army-Navy tailgate, which takes place before the game. Jocko Fuel is there giving away some I shouldn't say some, a lot of Jocko Go to get you hype for the game. Jocko, thank you as always for joining us, and thanks for all you do for the Travis Manion Foundation.
Thanks for having me, and thanks for all you all do. Appreciate it.